Chapter 15, Section 2 starts on page 1003. Once again, a lot of vocabulary. You need to study your vocabulary. On page 1004, right here, you need to know what quantitative data is, categorical data, discrete, and continuous. This and this, this and this. You need to understand those four terms. We will go over them in class again, but you need to study. Make sure you know what we're talking about. So number 3, you have to determine whether each is categorical or quantitative. Categorical fits in a category. Quantitative, numbers, quantity. Okay. Height would be quantitative. Hair color, that's a category. Carry a cell phone, quantitative, how many? Depends on the question on that one. It could also be categorical. Depends on how we ask the question. Number of text messages, this has to be quantitative. Time you spend exercising, that is quantitative, it's a number. Favorite type of TV show, right here, that's a category. All right. Now the rest of this section, we are going to, there's 3 different types of bar graphs and a circle graph. This should be review. So first we have a bar graph and the word frequency. Frequency, sometimes we'll use tally marks, just the number of times it occurs within the graph. I'm on page 1006. So here's your typical bar graph. Keep your bars separated. Make sure you have that. You have to label your axes. You'll always need your title and then your scale. One thing I insist that you do whenever you have a bar graph, I want you to write the numbers above the bars. So for brown, just put a 16 here. For blonde, watch your scale, that's 11. Can't read it. Black would be 5. Red's 3, and other is 1. Once you've got those numbers, it's just going to be a lot easier to answer the questions. I am not going to go through the questions. We will work on those in class. On page 1007 is another bar graph. It's got the title. Always need your title. It's got your categories here, labeled axes, X and Y, and then you've got your interval going by 2s. Okay, for January, put 8, February 9, March 4, April 7, May is 10, and June is 8. And so, for example, which month had the most sales of granola to go variety packs? You can just look at it. You've already done the work. You would just write May. Makes it a lot easier if you do a little bit work before you answer the questions. On page 1008, this is also a bar graph. It's just a horizontal bar graph. It's the exact same thing, except the bars are going horizontally. Title, labeled axes, my interval, going by 5. Still want you to label the bars. This is going to be about 46. Deer is 35. Dolphins 20. Bison 30. And elephant is 40. Okay, so this would be a horizontal bar graph. Still a bar graph. Pretty easy. Moving on. Problem 3. It's a lot to cover in this section. We're not going to do all the questions. On page 1010, this is a double bar graph. Title, label, label, interval, going by tens, each line is 5. What's different with the double bar graph is that for apples, there's two different categories. So you got to find your key. You have to look at your key. The left column, the lighter column is Saturday. The right column, the darker column, is Sunday. Still want you to label. So this would be 45 and 50, 30 and 20. Oranges is 20 and 15. And bananas are the same for both day, 40 and 40. So some of the questions that you might get asked would be which fruit sold most on Saturday, which fruit sold most on Sunday, and then it's going to ask you to combine. So this is a double bar graph. Jumping all the way to page 1013. This is called a stacked bar graph. This is a stacked bar graph. Once again, you have two categories, and it makes it a little harder. So what I'd like to tell is write the numbers inside each bar. So for soccer boys is 15. Soccer girls, be careful on this because you got to do a little math. It's 10. It's easier to do totals with stacked bar graphs, but individual, you got to pay attention. So basketball, boys is 20, girls is 10, track, boys is 10 and 20, volleyball, 15 apiece. And then you can put your totals on top. Soccer, least popular. Interesting, just saying. It's an accurate graph. Okay, so this is called a stacked bar graph. And then the final type of graph in this section is a circle graph. We call them pie charts before. Circle graph. Circle graph uses percentage. And if you add up all the percents in your circle graph, hopefully you are saying right now that it adds up to, what percent is the whole thing? 100%. You would have your key to identify the different pies. You're going to have a different key. But you've done these graphs before. They're not new. Just the math's going to be a little more tricky. That is it for 15.2. We'll go over the vocabulary, but you've got to study. You're going to have a quiz soon on the vocabulary for chapter 15. Get started on the packet.